The stars above Proxima Sigma 9 burned dim through the haze of orbital wreckage. Great coils of shattered alloy, the remnants of shattered fleets, drifted silently in the black. It had once been a major trade node of the Urasan hegemony, a luminous bastion of power in the galactic north. Now it lay in ruin, the system cracked open by war. In its shadow, humanity bled, yet refused to die. High Lord Commander Zelter of the Drajan Dominion leaned back into his throne of bone and black steel aboard the dreadnought Ravager of Suns. His obsidian armor hissed with coolant as he surveyed the projection before him. A looping feed of captured footage played in the air, a cluster of primitive Terran fighters diving through his cruiser formation, scattering like insects. With his mandibles twitching in amusement, Zelter motioned for the human weapons analyst to step forward. The pale creature, draped in thin oxygen gear and bruised from interrogation, knelt. "These kinetic slug throwers," Zelter said, voice thick with contempt, "are what your species brings to a galactic battlefield." The human Sergeant Darius Holt, 3rd Terran Expeditionary, said nothing. His swollen eye locked onto the display, where a coilgun round ricocheted off the armored hull of a Drajan raider and disintegrated harmlessly. Zelter laughed, a low, reverberating sound like the grinding of tectonic plates. "Your civilization barely escaped its own gravity well, and yet you believe you can stand among us. We were vaporizing continents when your ancestors worshipped fire." The High Lord waved a clawed hand, dismissing the projection. "Your species is finished. Our fleet will raise your last strongholds on Europa and Titan within the week. You've no ships left that can contest even a patrol cruiser." Darius wiped blood from his lip, eyes still fixed ahead. "You misunderstand humanity," he said quietly. Zelter leaned forward. "Explain." "We don't win because we're more advanced. We win because we adapt faster than anyone expects, and when we're cornered, we don't break, we evolve." The alien commander considered the words with idle interest, then motioned to his guard. "Throw him back in the cell, let him ponder evolution while he starves." As Darius was dragged out, deep within the bowels of the Ravager of Suns, something else stirred. At the edge of the system, hidden beneath the fractured rings of a shattered moon, the ISS Vanguard drifted silent and cloaked. Scarred and jury-rigged beyond recognition, the human battleship was a testament to stubborn survival. Its original design, a Terran-heavy cruiser, was now buried beneath layers of salvaged alien armor, black market tech, and hybridized systems stolen from over a dozen galactic species. Its bridge flickered with red emergency light. Commander Iana Voss stood at the helm, her dreadlocks tied tight behind her head, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. A storm of voices buzzed over the comms, engineers, tacticians, scavengers, and defected Xenos all working as one. "Status on the core forge?" she asked. "Still unstable," came the reply from Lieutenant Alvarez. "But we've got the replication interface working. The AI's begun shaping raw debris into usable alloy." Iana exhaled. It was a gamble beyond reckless. Human engineers had cracked part of a collapsed Alari nanofactory algorithm 6 weeks ago, an ancient self-forging system left abandoned in a derelict world. The concept was simple. Given enough raw material, it could build anything. But the trick was teaching it to improvise. That was the part the aliens never thought to do. "Show me what it made," she said. On the holotable, a new shape resolved, angular, unorthodox, half-mad by traditional standards. A weapon platform cobbled from melted Drajan armor, obsolete Terran turrets, alien antimatter capacitors, and God knew what else. The AI, trained on battlefield feedback and chaos pattern recognition, had designed it with no concept of tradition or constraint. Iana smiled. "Run a full simulation. I want proof it'll fire." "Commander," Alvarez said cautiously, "if this thing works, it could breach a dreadnought hull, but we only have the materials for one." "Then we use it where it'll hurt the most," Iana said. "We hit Ravager of Suns." Across the bridge, silence followed. "That's suicide," murmured one of the newer techs. "Zelter has 20 escort ships and a planetary defense grid. We won't make it within range." "We're not going in guns blazing," Iana said. "We let them find us." They all looked to her. Iana stepped to the viewport and stared out at the void. Her fingers tapped the railing with slow deliberation. "Zelter thinks we're broken. That's his mistake. We show him what humans can build from the bones of defeat." Back aboard the Drajan dreadnought, Zelter stood before a council of holographic warlords, each wreathed in ceremonial glyphs, each more ancient and jaded than the last. "The human resistance will die on Titan," one said. "Do not prolong this theater, Zelter. You waste time on a dying species," another growled. Zelter bowed slightly, though arrogance shone in every motion. Their extinction shall be absolute. I simply enjoy watching them squirm. Just then a sensor alert pinged across his console, a cloaked signal Terran frequency, one ship nearby. Zelter raised a brow. They've come to me. He turned, mandibles curling into a grin. Bring the captured human to the bridge. Let him watch his kin's final act of defiance. Darius Holt was yanked from his cell once more, shackled and bleeding. But as he was dragged across the bridge floor, he met Ayana's face on the screen, broadcasting in clear defiance. "Commander Voss," he whispered, all flickering in his battered voice. Ayana looked directly into the dreadnought's bridge camera, eyes unwavering. "You think our weapons are primitive, Zelter," she said, "but you've never seen what we make when there are no rules left to follow." Then the signal cut. And the ISS Vanguard dropped cloak, already charging toward the dreadnought. To the Drajan, it was suicide. To the humans, it was the beginning. The Ravager of Suns stirred like a wounded leviathan, its dorsal batteries pivoting with brutal grace as the ISS Vanguard tore through the wreck-choked orbit. 1,000 warning klaxons roared across the dreadnought's bridge. Drajan crew moved with predatory precision, and yet Zelter sat still, cold amusement glinting in his eyes. "One ship," he muttered, "they think to sting a god." But the Vanguard was no longer a standard vessel. It was a machine of desperation, every panel a scar, every circuit bent to a singular purpose: break the predator's jaw. Yana Voss stood calm as fire bloomed across the hull. Plasma grazed their shields, chunks of debris spun away, but her voice cut clean through the chaos. "Deploy the Shard Lance." Deep in the Vanguard's belly, the AI completed its sequence. What emerged from the automated forge was unrecognizable to any species: angular plates, rotating cores, alloy muscles layered with reactive threads. It was barely a weapon by galactic standards. No known doctrine could classify it. A converted mass driver mounted with stolen dark matter capacitors, guidance from reverse-engineered Drajan telemetry, cooling vents from a scavenged Runari heat siphon, wrapped in adaptive shielding tuned to mimic space debris. The Shard Lance. Its barrel extended through the dorsal vent, magnetic locks humming with rising charge. "Target dreadnought spine," Ayana ordered. "One shot, make it count." Alvarez's fingers danced over the console. "Guidance locked, core overheating. We have 60 seconds of optimal alignment." A sensor ping screamed. 15 Drajan skirmishers closed in. No time for elegance. "Brace," Ayana barked. Outside, the Vanguard executed a hard rotation. It spun like a hammer thrown by a god, engine plumes flaring as its shields buckled and pulsed. The ship took 2 direct hits to its starboard flank. Hull integrity dropped to 41%. Still it moved. Inside the Ravager's, Zelter frowned. "That maneuver, they're charging into our field of fire." The Drajan bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Zelter rose. "Prepare counter-barrage. I want that ship atomized." But before the order completed transmission, the Shard Lance fired. There was no sound in space, but within the minds of every being nearby, something snapped. A single beam, narrow as a needle, blue-white with layered gravity distortion, punched from the Vanguard's spine. It passed clean through the battlefield, through the shields of 2 interceptors, through the armor of a third, and struck the Ravager of Suns just below its main reactor node. At first, nothing happened. Then the dreadnought screamed. Alien alloys shrieked as the Lance's exotic payload detonated, not in the traditional sense but via spatial implosion. A chain of localized gravity collapses tore open the reactor compartment. Reinforced Drajan metals crumpled like wet cloth. Entire compartments were sheared from the inside out, folding inward on points that no longer existed. On the bridge, Zelter staggered as systems failed around him. Displays shattered into static. Artificial gravity lurched. Power conduits burst. The dreadnought listed hard to starboard, bleeding fire and bodies into the void. "Status," he barked, smoke curling around him. "Catastrophic breach in central spine. Internal warp grid destabilized. Multiple decks non-responsive. Primary reactor venting into real space." His adjutant spat, coughing through his rebreather. "Impossible. That weapon couldn't be human-made. The physics didn't align with their known capabilities. Their metallurgy should never have held against the output required." And yet it had. Outside, the Vanguard was limping. One of its engines was gone, reduced to slag, but it still moved, still hunted. Onboard, Ayana Voss remained unmoved. "Reload Shard Lance prototype, target the forward AI core." Alvarez shook his head. Can't, coils gone, core burned out after first discharge. Then give me options. He hesitated, we could deliver it. Yana turned, how? Manually. The bridge fell silent, then Yana nodded, prep a drop pod. In the dreadnought's underbelly, fires raged through collapsing decks. Automated bulkheads slammed shut to contain atmosphere loss. Drajan soldiers barked orders through mask speakers, dragging wounded clear of gravity shears, but the chaos wasn't just physical. Something else had crept into the ranks. Veer. The weapon had struck a nerve deeper than alloy or hull. These warriors, genetically forged and trained across centuries, were taught that humans were lesser, predictable, bound by crude tools and instincts, but what they had just witnessed was impossible, and impossibility cracked belief. Inside the prison deck, Darius Holt lay flat, listening as explosions rippled through the ship's structure. When the guard came again, stumbling with blood on his armor, Darius lunged. He broke the alien's breathing rig with a twist, caught the pulse blade before it fell, and sprinted barefoot across the corridor. He knew this ship, knew where they held the uplink decks, and if he could reach one, if he could transmit the targeting data, then Iana's crew could put this monster down for good. As Darius ran, alarms blared in a dozen dialects. AI subroutines fought to contain cascading failures. Drajan warriors fell back from internal detonations, and above it all, Zelter roared. Purge the vermin, lock down all remaining decks, I want their ship destroyed. But even as he spoke, a pod detached from the Vanguard's ruined flank, shaped like a needle, dark and fast. It streaked toward the dreadnought under cover of its own debris field. No engine flare, no heat signature. Inside was Iana Voss. Strapped in, heart hammering, she held the Shard Lance's final payload, now converted into a single-use core detonation device. It would never pass through shields, but if placed inside the target. Iana felt the pod shudder as it connected to the Ravager's hull. She exhaled, and then she began cutting her way in. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the system, a signal reached the remnants of the Terran fleet near Neptune's orbit. The battered destroyers, stealth frigates, and lunar defense outposts picked up Iana's message. Her voice clear and defiant, the dreadnought is bleeding, its commander in disarray, mobilize now, we break their line tonight. Across fractured command decks and hollowed-out warships, humanity stirred. Admiral Chan of the ISS Tempest issued the order, all remaining ships burned to intercept, we stand with the Vanguard. The last fleet of Earth moved like wolves through smoke. Back aboard the Ravager, Zelter descended into madness. They dare set foot upon this ship. He moved through the crippled corridors himself now, blade in hand, ready to face whatever fool had come to die. But the deeper he went, the more damage he saw. Gravity pulses had twisted the architecture. Fire suppression systems screamed. The Ravager, once the crown jewel of the Dominion, was dying. Then he saw her. Iana Voss, bleeding, smoke-scorched, dragging the shard core toward the heart of his vessel. He raised his blade. She raised her eyes. And they charged. The collision was thunder and fury, but only one of them had trained for chaos. Iana sidestepped Zelter's initial strike, the Drajan warblade slicing into the bulkhead behind her. Sparks sprayed, and the heat of his rage filled the corridor like a furnace. She moved low, fast. Humans had shorter reach, but she used it to get under his guard, slamming the magnetic clamps of the shard core against the deck plating behind him before diving back as his claw swept across. The core began its charge sequence. Zelter didn't yet realize it. He advanced, massive and tireless, slashing again. You're an insect, he spat. Your weapons are scrap, your tactics desperation. Iana rolled, the edge of his blade searing her side, blood blooming across her uniform. But she gritted her teeth and came up with her sidearm, old Terran make, reinforced barrel, point blank. She fired into his knee joint. The kinetic round cracked alien alloy. He staggered. She moved again. Every second she drew him away from the core was another second closer to ignition. You have power, she said, ducking another blow, but you're blind. You think strength is all that matters. That tradition guarantees victory. You speak of defiance, Zelter growled, rising again, yet you crawl through our wreckage like rats. Iana backed toward the reactor chamber. The ship trembled beneath her, and she felt it in her bones. The Vanguard's attack had opened deep wounds. We don't crawl, she said, voice cold. We learn. And then she triggered the remote. The wall behind Zelter detonated, not a full charge, but enough to send him reeling into the chamber with the shard core. The containment door slammed shut behind him. Locked in, alone with the device. Yana collapsed against the wall, breath heaving, blood dripping from her side. She activated her comm. Shard core in final countdown, I've sealed him inside. Alvarez's voice came back, raw with disbelief. You trapped Zelter. Had to, she wheezed. We couldn't kill him in open combat. He's the spine of their campaign. You cut that, the whole invasion fractures. From within the sealed chamber, Zelter's voice bellowed, muffled but furious. You dare. Yana didn't respond. She stood, swayed, and limped back down the corridor as the timer ticked down. Inside the containment chamber, Zelter slammed his blade against the walls, tried to carve through, but the alloy was reinforced, part of the Vanguard's stolen tech. The humans had laid this trap with pieces of his own civilization's wreckage. He realized too late what had been done. Not a suicide attack, a surgical removal. The shard core reached critical. A pulse exploded outward, silent, perfect, terminal. Inside the core of the Ravager of Suns, gravity folded into itself, space flexed, energy screamed out in a single, imploding breath, and then the dreadnought's heart collapsed. The explosion did not spread like fire, it didn't erupt, it inverted. Half the dreadnought vanished in a sphere of compressed singularity. Everything near it, bulkheads, systems, crew, was torn out of existence and crushed into a pulse of exotic matter that bled away into the void. From space, the Ravager looked as though a fist had closed through its center, its hull crumpled inward. What remained drifted, dead and broken. Far from the epicenter, Darius Holt reached the uplink chamber. Gasping, wounded, he connected a makeshift relay to the ship's communications grid. The terminal sparked, barely functional, but it was enough. He transmitted the dreadnought's internal telemetry before and after detonation directly to Terran Command. The message was short, but it said everything. The Drajan can bleed, we just made them bleed, Earth stands. Across the system, the effect was immediate. Drajan coordination fractured. With Zelter gone and the dreadnought neutralized, confusion spread like rot. Ships began retreating without orders. Field commanders argued over tactical chains of command. And into that chaos surged the last Terran fleet. From Neptune's shadow, from Europa's ice tunnels, from orbital shipyards still blackened by bombardment, they came. Patchwork warships, modular strike craft, converted mining vessels with jury-rigged railguns. Humanity's remnant forces no longer played by anyone's rules. They had torn up the galactic playbook and written their own. The Drajan expected formations. Instead, they got distributed swarm tactics, decentralized AI-driven targeting, improvised code injections into Drajan war software. Entire alien cruisers shut down mid-battle from viral incursions piggybacking on their own signal bands. Within an hour, the tide of battle flipped. Terran ships didn't match the Drajan in elegance or age, but they had numbers, rage, and creativity unbound by doctrine. Yana floated in a medical stasis unit aboard the ISS Tempest, her body broken but her mind intact. Admiral Chan stood beside her, watching her vitals stabilize. She did it, he said to no one in particular. She killed a legend. Beside him, Alvarez looked out at the data streaming in, and we gave birth to a new one. But even as the Ravager fell, something deeper had shifted. Throughout the Dominion, border fleets received news of Zelter's death. His campaign, the symbolic spearhead of their subjugation of humanity, was shattered. In their culture, death in combat wasn't shameful, but losing to a lesser species, that was heresy. Drajan worlds began questioning command, fringe clans refused reinforcements, recruitment slowed. And the Council of Warlords convened, for the first time in centuries, in an emergency conclave. Some wanted vengeance. Others whispered of a terrifying possibility. What if the humans weren't just defiant? What if they were evolving faster than anyone thought possible? On Earth, as news spread, the old cities stirred. Fires were still burning, skies still black from orbital ash, but from bunkers and domes and shattered arcologies the people emerged. And they did not emerge in despair. They emerged to rebuild, to arm, to prepare. Back aboard the Vanguard, towed now by Allied ships, engineers examined the shattered Shard Lance housing. What it had done once, it could do again. And better. Human scientists and alien defectors stood side by side now, reviewing its chaos-born blueprints. Each frame of data taught them more. What the Dominion had laughed at, what they had dismissed as primitive, was about to become the backbone of a new Terran arsenal. Not elegant, not standardized, but unstoppable. Far beyond the battlefront, in a darkened hall beneath a frozen moon, a group of alien engineers watched the footage of the dreadnought's collapse. One, a former Alari weapons designer, shook his head in awe. They forged that weapon from battlefield scrap and raw intuition, he said. They did in weeks what our civilizations failed to achieve in centuries. Another nodded grimly. The Drajan were right about one thing: humans are dangerous. Not because of what they are, the Alari whispered, but because of what they might become. In the scorched wake of Zelter's death, the Dominion fractured. Fleet Commandant Vraxos, second in the Drajan chain of supremacy, received the reports in his forward bastion along the Dural expanse. The data was irrefutable: telemetry of the Ravager of Sun's destruction, confirmed biosignature loss of High Lord Commander Zelter, enemy fleet advances in the Proxima Sigma 9 theater. All traced back to a species the Dominion had not even classified as Class 3 strategic risk a mere cycle ago. Vraxos stood silently, claws flexing against the edge of his console. He was older than Zelter by a full generation, more calculating, less prone to spectacle. For him, conquest was not glory, it was calculus. "What of the weapon?" he demanded. The strategist to his right, a shriveled, pallid relic of the intelligence caste, shifted nervously. The core detonation was unconventional. Energy signatures suggest a convergent singularity implosion triggered by layered fusion collapse around a compressed dark matter spine. Design is non-standard, sourced from multiple incompatible architectures, likely human-engineered from salvaged tech. Incompatible, Vraxos hissed. They built it with no reference to established doctrines, the strategist replied. It violates all known structural safety protocols. By Dominion classification, it is a heresy machine. Vraxos turned toward the massive tactical holomap of the Orion Spur. Red vectors displayed Dominion fleets. White and blue showed the Terran incursions, once disorganized, now coordinated, efficient, spreading. He opened a direct channel to the War Council. "We are no longer facing a species clawing for survival," he said. "They are learning faster than we can suppress them. We must prepare for a new campaign, one not of extermination, but containment." But the Council was slow to accept this shift. Some warlords wanted to burn Earth's sun to ash. Others refused to believe a hybrid weapon built from scrap and salvage could unmake a dreadnought. Political paralysis spread like oil on fire. So Vraxos did what Zelter never would. He went off script. In the shipyards above Saturn's shattered ringline, Terran engineers worked triple shifts under makeshift domes. Artificial gravity had not been restored. Vacuum-sealed suits were standard, yet the forge bays buzzed with more innovation than any pre-war lab on Earth had ever seen. Dr. Lena Voss, Ayana's sister, once a theoretical physicist, now head of the Vanguard Project's Replication Core, oversaw the weapon's reverse engineering. Before her flickered a redesigned Shard Lance schematic. This version no longer required rare alien power cells or unstable field regulators. Instead, it drew upon the one resource Earth still had in abundance: junk, battle debris, derelict components, shattered satellites, even the husks of orbital defense cannons. With adaptive AI forges, they could reshape chaos into precision. And more than that, human AIs, now liberated from old constraints, had begun iterating on the design, not just building new weapons, evolving them between battles. "What's the replication cycle?" Lena asked. 4 hours for a new Lance turret, her assistant said. "We've got enough salvaged mass for 6. "Make 10, she replied. "Pull matter from the wrecks in Sector 5. I want every orbital platform armed." Meanwhile, Admiral Chan moved Earth's fleet into its first offensive formation since the war began. At his command, 26 functioning warships, 12 repurposed alien cruisers, hundreds of autonomous drones, and orbital weapons platforms now fitted with modified shard emitters. It wasn't a fleet that followed protocol. It was a fleet built to unmake expectations. They no longer mirrored galactic norms, they shattered them. And in the dark, others watched. Vraxos's infiltration team arrived on Europa without warning. They bypassed orbital sensors using an ancient Tivren cloaking device, one the humans had no defense against yet. Their objective wasn't sabotage. It was observation. The commander of the infiltration unit, Kex, was one of the few Drajan who had studied Terran psychology. What he found in the ice cities of Europa shocked him, not their technology, still crude in many ways, but the culture. Civilians worked alongside soldiers, scientists debated warriors, children sketched battle plans beside veterans. There were no castes, no bloodline-based command structures. Authority was earned, not bred. It was disordered, and yet impossibly effective. Kex returned his report to Vraxos. They are the only species we have encountered that uses chaos as strategy. They don't fear collapse, they use it as fuel. Vraxos watched the footage. One scene showed a young engineer modifying a railgun using parts scavenged from 4 different species, tech. Another showed a fleet officer promoting a drone AI to strategic command status because its simulations outperformed humans. No protocol, no purity, just results. He realized then the Dominion's age-old strength, its rigid inherited order, was turning into a weakness. Back in orbit of Earth, Ayanna Voss awoke. Her body was barely functioning, neural scarring, muscle reconstruction. The doctors warned her she'd never walk the same. She asked how many new weapons had been forged. They told her 22, 2 of them on Mars, the rest scattered in orbit and Titan's shipyards. She stood up anyway. In a repurposed observatory near Olympus Mons, a signal pulsed into space. A beacon, encrypted with an alien language, answered by only a select few. It was not a distress call. It was a summons. Humanity had allies now. Defectors, exiles, dissidents from across the fractured galactic orders, some Runari philosophers, a few disgraced Alari minds, even a former Scarvii tactician who had once designed Dominion kill fleets. They came not because they loved humanity. They came because they saw the same thing Vraxos did. Change. Humanity wasn't just surviving. It was spreading not through territory. Through ideas. Hybrid war doctrines, open-source weapon design, shared command between humans and artificial minds, a concept of warfare that hadn't been seen since the fall of the ancients. And most terrifying of all, they shared everything they learned. No central knowledge banks, no locked research vaults. They taught the broken how to fight. They taught the conquered how to rebuild. And that terrified empires more than any shard lance. The Dominion reacted the only way it knew how. It sent a second dreadnought. Hammer of conquest, faster than the Ravager, heavily shielded, wielding gravity-shear torpedoes that could split moons. It entered the Sol system through a dark corridor at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Its command crew expected resistance. They didn't expect what came next. As it approached Saturn orbit, a dozen signals spiked from within the debris field. Each one a modified lance. Each one firing in synchronization, using predictive AI models trained on the first dreadnought's death. They didn't target the bridge. They didn't aim for the engines. They struck the warp core's shielding nodes in precise rhythm, tearing through layers of defense that had taken centuries to refine. The hammer buckled before it could complete its first transmission. Its fall was broadcast across every Dominion channel. This time, humans wanted them to see. Back on Europa, a new statue was raised in the ice square, not of Ayanna, not of any leader, but of a forge. Simple, functional, half-melted. Its plaque read, "From the wreckage we rise." In the Dominion homeworlds, silence gripped the upper councils. Some called for total war. Others feared what war might now bring. Because the humans weren't just building weapons. They were becoming a blueprint. The Dominion did not collapse. Empires of that age and breadth do not shatter overnight, but it recoiled. From the outer spirals to the deep strongholds of its central stars, it retracted fleets, abandoned garrisons, and cut free the limbs that could no longer be defended. In its silence, something else expanded. Humanity. Not by conquering, but by connecting. The war had reshaped them. Earth was still wounded, its skies scorched, oceans poisoned by orbital fallout, and cities shattered into monument graves. But its people had changed. Their leaders no longer wore uniforms from the old Earth nations. Those banners were gone, folded into the fires of unity. What replaced them was the Assembly, a council of engineers, tacticians, and visionaries who rose not from bloodlines or inheritance, but from consequence. They didn't call themselves rulers. They called themselves custodians. Of what they had learned. Of what they could now build. Of what the galaxy was about to become. The first signal arrived from beyond the Chiral Veil, a border region even Dominion fleets had avoided for centuries. It bore no name, only a waveform encoded with the human language protocols. Whoever sent it had studied them, listened. The message was simple. We saw what you did, we are listening now. It came from the Veil's edge. And others followed. Small empires, pirate enclaves, species long subjugated under the Dominion's doctrine of purity. They reached out, some with weapons in hand, others with open minds, but all with questions. Who are you? What did you use? How did you build what should not be built? On Titan's reconstructed black ice foundries, Terran engineers worked with defected Alari metallurgists and Runari crystallographers. Together, they began assembling a weapon not for war, but for understanding. A translation lattice forged from graviton harmonics and quantum resonance, designed to parse not just alien languages but alien thought structures. It wasn't about making people speak the same words. It was about making them understand each other. Lena Voss named it Arclight, and it became the basis of the first human-led interspecies research conclave. The Dominion, reeling, prepared its counteroffensive in the Drashan Fold, a region dense with shipyards and industrial moons. But when they arrived in force to assert dominance, they found the systems empty. Vacated. The local populations had defected. Not to humanity's banner. To their model. They were building lances of their own now, not perfect copies, variations, 1,000 different interpretations, some beautiful, some terrifying. They called it the fracture doctrine, weapon theory born of entropy, adapted to local needs, driven by constant feedback. It was impossible to predict, even harder to suppress. Entire cultures began discarding centuries of inherited doctrine overnight. Because the humans hadn't brought conquest. They had brought permission. Permission to innovate, to disobey, to dismantle what was once untouchable. And it spread faster than fleets ever could. In a chamber of obsidian on the Dominion's capital world of Drosquar, Supreme Strategist Torval received the reports. He was not like Zelter, not bound by tradition, but he was afraid. Not of defeat, but of irrelevance. If we destroy their worlds, he said to his advisors, they will scatter and return with weapons even we do not understand. If we assimilate them, one advisor offered. They cannot be assimilated, Torval hissed. Their very identity is change. He turned to the Central Intelligence Array, an ancient Dominion construct that had not been updated in millennia, and asked the one question his people feared most. What would happen if we adopted their methods? The array processed for 6 full minutes. Then responded, Dominion paradigm would cease, survival probability increases, identity probability terminated. To survive as they were, the Dominion had to remain the Dominion. To survive at all, it might have to become something else. That was the paradox now tearing it apart. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Uit corridor, the ISS Vanguard, fully rebuilt, its hull fused with alien alloys and human-machine intuition, made its final journey. Yana Voss, scarred and cybernetically reinforced, stood on the command deck once again, not to lead a battle, but to lead a contact. The signal from the chiral veil had deepened. It was not just a message. It was a door. And behind it, the first evidence of an ancient race long believed extinct, the architects. The ones who had built the old megastructures scattered across the spiral arms, the ones who vanished before the Dominion rose. The door wasn't physical, it was dimensional, phased. No one else had ever solved the signal harmonics. But the Vanguard's AI had. Because the shard lance had been born of broken logic. And the door responded only to those who built outside reason. Ayana's voice cut through the bridge. Begin the phase entry protocol, let's see who left the lights on. As the Vanguard pierced the veil, Terran ships watched from behind, transmitting every reading, every variable, every anomaly across the network, not to military channels, but to everyone, open source. Even Dominion listening posts received it. Because this was not war. This was humanity pulling the galaxy forward. With or without permission. In the final broadcast before the Vanguard vanished into the phased dimension, Ayana left a message. It wasn't to Earth. It was to the galaxy. To those still watching, to those still fighting, you once laughed at our weapons, you saw scrap and rust and desperation, but our strength was never in steel, it was in what we do with it. You feared that we might rise, you were right. She paused. In the forge we found our purpose, in the ashes we found each other, and in the dark we found the map forward. Her eyes burned with something that had no translation. We are Terrans, we're not here to inherit your empires. We're here to reinvent everything. And the signal ended. Months later, in orbit of a gas giant long forgotten by any chart, a Dominion scout ship picked up an artifact drifting in the void, a fragment of the Vanguard's hull. Attached to it, fused into the alloy, was a symbol no one recognized. Half human, half something else. Beneath it, 3 words etched in 300 languages. We are still building. Humanity was never meant to survive. It was meant to disrupt. And in the end, that made all the difference.